solutions in order to use their technologies. So it's wonderful to see, an organization like Raise Green, that we're very proud of the work they're doing to address something that's really, really hard, and to be working with the members and to be reaching out to other members and speaking with those other members about how they could potentially, use the Raise Green platform to raise capital in new and innovative and exciting ways. We always want to promote those collaborations, always want to do that. And so we're very cool to see one emerging here. The third thing, and frankly, not that the first two aren't important, the third and the most important thing I do want to emphasize is that this is not a particular promotion by Greentown of Raise Green's product in any way, shape, or form. And I just want to very respectfully say that to everybody. And I would encourage, just like you do with any investment opportunity that you undertake, that you, as the startup who's looking to partner or work with Raise Green, you evaluate it on its own merits and make sure that it is right for you. There are a lot of different avenues to raise capital. I'm really proud of what Raise Green is doing to open up a new avenue, but every startup has to evaluate it against the other alternative they have to raise capital, which of course is the ultimate alternative, whether to raise capital at all, and determine whether it's best for you. I'm here in Houston, always available by Slack or by email, as is Jackie, to talk anything related to fundraising. Always around to be helpful in any way that I possibly can. I'll be back in Somerville later this week, and raising capital is near and dear to our hearts, which brings me full circle back to where I started, which is why I'm really proud of the work Raise Green's doing. We want to support and promote them. And so Matt, it's all yours, and best of luck working with the members and seeing opportunities to get them on your platform.
Great, thank you for that statement, Ryan. It's very important to recognize that crowdfunding may not be for everyone. Right, certain types of ventures are more suited than others. We've designed a regulating crowdfunding platform for climate tech companies and climate tech projects because my co-founder and myself, Franz, we were really frustrated at the pace that climate solutions are being deployed. When I look at the Arctic being 40 degrees hotter than it typically is, and I look at the financing gap that's making us lose track of 1.5 degrees Celsius. We want to add another tool to the entrepreneur's toolkit, but sometimes you don't need them. So I think it's a very good statement to make. And we're happy to share the solution we've concocted and to explore if it might work with your capital formation strategy. My name is Matt Moroney. I'm an environmental chemist and a data scientist by training. I went and was going to get a PhD in climate science. I went to Siberia and I was standing on the tundra looking out at the methane bubbling. And I said, it really kind of isn't the time to be writing papers. We need to deploy all of the solutions we have as quickly as possible. So I went and worked in the private sector for 5 years, cleaning up contaminated properties, and saw that unfortunately the people who were exposed often had to leave after they were redeveloped. So I went to graduate school with this in mind, and I met Franz there, and regulation crowdfunding happened to come into play right around that time. And so we said, can we use regulation crowdfunding as a tool to accelerate the deployment of climate solutions? And so that's what became Raise Green about 4 years ago. It took about 1.5 years to get all of our regulatory approvals. We're regulated with the Securities and Exchange Commission, as well as a member of FINRA. And we exist solely to support climate companies. So with that being said, I have just one more statement, which is that you are all the heroes, and we want to support and accelerate your work. We found crowdfunding to be a flexible tool for a lot of different types of projects on your own terms. And so with that being said, I'm going to run through the presentation that we've been giving primarily for solar projects, and I'll make a few key kind of distinctions on how it could apply to you all as ventures, either for direct corporate debt or equity, as well as for demonstrating pilot projects. We're doing a big push to coincide with the Members Day on April 21st. We'll have a number of projects up on the platform, and if it makes sense, maybe it will be one of you. So I'm going to share my screen, and if you have questions during the presentation, please just drop them in the chat. Some people like the QA module, some people don't. Doesn't matter to me. I'll look at both. So this is designed for financing for solar developers, but any climate project could work. It could be, for example, you have a carbon scrubber that you want to deploy as its own entity, and you've found a company that's going to buy those credits, but you need the upfront CapEx. So let's dive into how it works and how crowdfunding can be super simple financing on your own terms. So Raise Green exists to connect investors to your projects. There are 200 million Americans that are alarmed and concerned about climate change. And when they see something like the Arctic being 40 degrees hotter than it normally is, they frantically Google what to do, and they're met with solutions like unplugging your cell phone from the wall or recycling, which seem woefully mismatched to the scale of the problem. We need a solution that scales at the same pace or faster than the problem, and we think that hundreds of millions of Americans are ready to support that. The developers come to our platform. We're SEC registered. We help structure an offering. So that could include helping to assist setting up new entities, offering template securities. We're not lawyers. We don't give legal advice. We don't give financial advice, but we do have a number of example projects of which you can use those documents as a starting point. So just a quick overview of what regulation crowdfunding is. It's a part of the Securities Act that came about in 2018. It allows you to sell securities publicly to anyone in the United States and even abroad, but we tend to only focus on US investors. Companies can raise up to $5 million per year, and anyone can invest. That means people could put in $100, people could put in 100,000, or even several $1 million. And for any of you that are currently raising capital, especially in the friends and family or angel rounds, you'll know that you kind of have to pitch 10, 20, 30 angels. Each of them come with specific requests for information. The benefit crowdfunding has for that type of scenario is that you can't actually give people different information. So if someone asks you for a request, you say, hey, you have to ask that on the platform, and then you can answer it publicly so everyone can see. So that is a benefit because it does reduce the amount of time it takes to manage some of the investor questions that tend to come up during fundraising. It's very flexible for solar developers or even folks like passive house developers or carbon scrubber developers. A lot of the time they can get financing, say 5% for 5 years, but they plug that into the model and the project doesn't move forward. And they don't have a lot of leverage to negotiate with the bank or with the private equity fund offering them that rate. And so we flip the script by allowing the developers or the entrepreneurs to set their own financing terms and offer those to the market to gauge interest. And more than anything, it's inclusive and supportive. We talk about democratizing sustainable investment. We talk about blended finance all the time, and it tends to be a lot of questions on how do we do it. This is how we do it. There's a regulation on the books right now. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. And community members can even create their own projects or invest in projects, whether that's down the street or across the country that align with their value. So since launching in July 2020, we've done 15 offerings through our platform: ventures, energy efficiency contracts, solar refinancing, and corporate debt. We have an approximate audience of 67,000 people through our paid media efforts. We have 15,000 people on our mailing list hungry for these types of investments. And we have, at this point, over 1,000 trades. Like we said, the average size is around 4,000, but we have a very wide spread from people of all different kind of ages, backgrounds, net worth, and incomes. I would highlight a few companies here. Block Power is an energy efficiency service company. National Energy Improvement Fund held services loans for contractors to install energy efficiency upgrades. Solaris Energy is a solar developer, and Ola Filter was a pre-seed venture developing a new water filtration technology for Guatemala. We've been featured in a ton of different press, but our most proud feature is Greentown Labs. We love being a member, and it's really a lot of fun. If you're familiar with project finance, typically you may have different types of capital at different stages of your projects. So you may get a development capital loan, you may get a construction loan. The construction loan may convert into the term loan. You can do a very simple debt offering for a project on Raise Green by combining a construction loan and a term loan at terms that make sense to make your project happen. Again, we think that the flexibility that this provides for developers is what actually can create additionality. Many solar developers come to us and they say, hey, we can't make this project move forward. So they have 5 or 10 projects sitting on the shelves, and many of these are the ones that have the most impact, but for whatever reason, they're currently not getting financed. We can talk about that if you're curious. We have a number of templatized structures that we've developed. We do straight kind of operational capital for companies. For example, the National Energy Improvement Fund. We can raise debt or equity into a holding company that then creates one or more projects or refinances a number of projects. That's the structure that Block Power and the Connecticut Green Bank use for their energy efficiency projects. Or you can even do direct project level debt to support equity coming in from the parent company. And that's what Solaris Energy did for an existing solar project in Vermont. This is all kind of the nuts and bolts, and this is all of our pricing and the different phases of an offering. So there's something called an indication of interest offering. That's where we suggest everyone starts, because there's no SEC paperwork that's filed, no money changes hands, but it allows you to ask the market and say, if I was to offer this, would you invest and how much? So it really lets us show you how much your project is actually worth on the terms that you want. That is free for Greentown members, and both in cash and securities. Takes about 4 hours of time, and that could be live on the platform in 2 weeks. So if folks are ready to go and curious about this mechanism, email me, reach out, and we can show you what it takes and begin that process together. There's no obligation to actually raise money. And so it's a great way to just learn more about regulation crowdfunding as a tool in the toolkit. We think it's going to be critical over the next 5 to 10 years to have this mechanism as an executive to understand fluid ways to make climate projects happen faster. If you decide to actually raise money, you say, this is great, I like working with Raise Green, investors are interested, you pass due diligence, then we actually help you structure and file your offering with the Securities and Exchange Commission. The pilot raise size is $250,000. With that level, you can self-certify financials. We take 5% cash of the raise, so $12,500, and 2% of all the securities. If you have all your documentation, that takes roughly about a week to prep your marketing campaign and assemble all of the documentation. And then that takes us about 4 to 6 weeks to have it go live and make sure that it passes the due diligence requirements. As that kind of pilot raise is happening, the $250K amount is determined by the regulation, because you can actually self-certify your financials. And if you decide, hey, I like this, you can actually go all the way up to 5 million, but you need to do an audit. And so the audit typically takes sometimes 10 weeks or so. And so we say, while you're doing the pilot raise, start the audit so that when the pilot is done, you can turn on the full 5 million if you actually need that much for the use of proceeds. That takes a little bit longer. And what we found is that once you get up to that level of preparing the documentation, the first offering takes quite a bit of time, But the second, third, fourth, and fifth offerings can be really quick. So we have the Connecticut Green Bank that's doing multiple offerings. We have Block Power doing multiple offerings. We have the National Energy Improvement doing multiple offerings. 40% of our issuers are actually doing more than one because the time dramatically decreases the second time. And so it's becoming a core part of their annual fundraising strategy to supplement other types of raising money. So I have a few case studies in here that go into the details of individual offerings. The National Energy Improvement Fund used preferred equity to basically help them get more loans out there. I love this. Opportunity to take direct action, improving local resilience and economic growth at a crucial moment in our political and social economy. The next case study we have is Block Power, which used a similar structure to the Connecticut Green Bank. So this was a portfolio of different energy efficiency projects at different life cycle stages. Some was development capital, some was construction capital, and some was refinance. They put that all together in a portfolio to offer 5.5% debt on a 12-year note. They raised $1 million, decided to do it again, raised another $1 million, decided to do it again. And there's one up live now if you want to take a look. That was for 12 different projects in New York and California. So basically, Danelle Baird, he says this is a great way for citizens to co-invest in green energy projects next to some of the world's leading investors. So it really is an egalitarian mechanism to get the whole kind of country involved. The last is Solaris Energy. So for the straight solar developers, there was an existing solar project. It didn't have any debt on it. So they said, great, let's sell for 4.25% debt on a 5-year note. They raised $250,000, and then they used that capital to build a new solar project. So Alex chose to do this, even though they had a strong balance sheet. They didn't need the money, but they wanted a fair and democratized wealth for our nation's people. So, I'll pause there and I'll answer some questions. I know it's lunchtime. We don't have to take the whole hour, but I'll stick around if there's enough questions. And this is my cell phone and my email there. So you can take a look and go into your details of your projects. So I'm just gonna take a quick stroll through the chat. And if you have any questions, I would love to learn more about your companies or try to assess if crowdfunding is good for you. Or if there's nothing, you can go get a sandwich or a salad. Oh, good. I love to see it. At least one question. I like that. Oh, two. Okay, awesome. All right. So have any of the companies that have used your platform moved on to the Series A, B rounds? We're early stage. So, we really only launched our marketplace about 15 months ago. So the companies, we've done 2 ventures. None of them have moved on to Series A, B yet. But they have been hitting milestones, so we feel optimistic about them. Our primary focus isn't ventures, but we wanted to, as a licensed funding portal, offer the opportunity if folks want to raise capital to explore what that would look like with Greentown members. You can take a look at some of the existing projects and all of the financeable ones we've done in the past at invest.raisegreen.com. There's a community solar project up right now. There's Block Power's up and the National Energy Improvement Fund is up. How do we sign up, EOD? Do you mean as an investor or as a project? As a project. Yeah, so the easiest way would be to reach out to me directly, email me. We'll set up a time and we'll run through the details of your project to see if it's a good fit with where you're at. And you asked for a minimal technology readiness level. So yeah, we don't want to fund R&D. So we're really looking for companies that are ready to deploy technology or looking for their first pilot project. It needs to have some sort of cash flow. So if you're doing a pilot project, for example, a new type of carbon scrubber, we'd want to look for an offtake contract. or some revenue showing growth, because ultimately, if you're raising capital, you need to have some way or some projections on how to return that money to investors. Alex Bloom asked, pre-revenue enterprise B2B material science company and do not have any B2C components. Would crowdfunding be a good fit given potential investors get no other personal benefit other than financial for joining us? Alex, I would challenge you to say, as a climate-focused material science company, I think many people would get personal benefits besides financial. For example, reducing carbon or reducing pollution would definitely be a personal benefit that's on top of the financial. Let's see. So yes, I don't think that's a problem. Even if you're not a B2C company, people still want to support climate projects and climate companies to get out there in the market faster. So the last piece I'll say is that although crowdfunding is relatively new in the United States, it's actually quite prominent in Europe. And so even companies that are Series B level tend to use crowdfunding because it's, for example, a fintech company, even if you have 20 or 30 million euros in financing, you can raise 5 million more, and you can actually accumulate a number of users for your products that become evangelists to their friends and family because they want their investment to succeed because they have skin in the game. So that's a really nice use case. Also, we find that some corporates are interested in using some of their marketing budget to directly invest in projects as a corporate social responsibility effort. Whereas a typical marketing campaign doesn't have a direct return. If you invest in a community project as a corporate, you also have a potential of a financial return. So I think there's a lot of exciting flexibility, a lot of blended democratic structures that come into play, and it tends to be more founder friendly. So it doesn't replace VC funding. You can only do 5 million per year, but it does provide a way to raise money that's different than the traditional path. Some VCs are all about it. Some VCs say it doesn't make too much sense. The cap table's too messy. If you issue debt, that doesn't really affect your cap table. So that's one way to kind of get around that. Okay. And I answered Iyad's question about, you make recommendations for project term, is that completely up to the project? Great question, Jacob. We, as a regulation crowdfunding platform focused on climate, we're in a really kind of blue ocean space. For almost 100 years, retail investors were not able to directly invest in private companies. That was a result of kind of some of the scams that happened that led up to the Great Depression. So there's not a lot of information about that. So we've been developing, our own risk return yield curve based on existing projects that we've seen, based on comparable market rates. So we're happy to provide a little bit of guidance on that. In a sense, it really is kind of this balance between making the project work and making the project attractive for investors. Just because something goes on the platform doesn't mean that it will get fully funded. So that's something to consider. So we're happy to give recommendations on what we've seen in the past. But ultimately, it has to be something that your project can bear. And that's part of the due diligence effort. We like to think of the, we're kind of figuring out this new yield curve. Typically we think of risk and return and the relative rates for those, but there's also this new axis of impact, the Z axis. So suddenly, we're kind of feeling out this new space and figuring out what retail and what public investments actually look like for climate. So it's pretty exciting, and we hope that you may join that journey with us. All right. Well, thanks for the engaging questions. I'll just go on, wait another minute or two. Folks can drop off if they feel that their question has been answered. And again, I'll put my email here in the chat so you can get it. Or you can visit us if you are in Somerville. We're on the second floor over by the tree house in the back. Come and bug us anytime, even if we're on a call, I don't mind. How long does the process usually take? So I'll just flip back up this slide so you can see in terms of time. But for an indication of interest, that's only a few hours really if you have all the documentation ready. To do a full offering, it takes about 40 hours, assuming everything's done. If you have to write stuff from scratch or you have to create a financial model or projections, it can take a little bit longer. There's the time it takes you and there's the time it takes us to basically review the stuff, make sure it's compliant, make sure that there's nothing concerning or unclear for investors. And not every project that applies to us does get on the platform. We've had about 300 people that we've talked to, and we have 15 projects. So it's pretty tough, but we're happy to work with you to make your project, palatable for investors if you're dedicated. So feel free to, take a screenshot of this if you want. And you can also email me directly and we can run through the details of your project company. Hey, thanks, George. Thanks for listening. I appreciate your engagement. Okay. Any final questions there, Ron or Iyad or Alex? Okay. Well, fantastic. You have my contact information. I just want to thank Jackie and Ryan and the other Jackie as well. Really exciting. We love the Greentown members. They're a massive source of inspiration for us. And I think you've created a really, really beautiful thing. So whether folks use RegCF to get their projects or any of the other partnerships that I know you work quite hard to build, we just want to see more of these heroes getting funded faster.
We agree. Thank you so much, Matt, for your time to explain Raise Green to our members. And obviously this has been recorded, so we're happy to share it with the community. Obviously you are able to share it with your network as much as you'd like. And yeah, we're really excited to see, this is another option, as Ryan mentioned, for our members to explore for raising funds. So thank you again for your time.
All right. Take care. Thank you.